And if we are hoping for a return to Laodicean normality, we're not ready for Jesus to come. If you're hoping that this thing will just blow over so that you can go back to living your nice, comfortable, middle-class American lifestyle, and maybe Jesus can come 10, 15, or 20 years from now when I won't have to worry about it, you're not on the right path to be ready for the coming of Jesus. God is looking for people who will say, I want Jesus to come now. Listen, if Jesus is your best friend, if he's your dearest and closest friend on the earth, yes, you'll understand that there's a time of trouble that is coming, but you will want to be one of the privileged ones who will be alive to see Jesus comes without tasting death. Now, some of us may be laid to rest before that time, but you would love to be one of the ones who would see Jesus come sooner rather than later. And we're going to talk about that more, but sometimes I see this mentality, and this applies to whatever age group you're in. I see some younger people here, I see some people my age and some people a little bit older than me. And the mentality goes something like this. When you're a kid, you're like, well, I hope Jesus comes, but I'd like to grow up first. Finish school and get married and have kids. Then Jesus can come. Then you get married and you have kids and you're like, well, I'd like to see my kids grow up and accomplish something. So then your kids grow up and you blink a couple of times and they've already graduated high school and maybe college, and now they are getting married and they're having kids. And then it's like, well, I'd like to see my grandkids grow up. And then by then it's like, what's left? Not much other than the end of retirement, and then you're at the end of life. And again, Jesus is looking for a generation who will say, come now, Lord Jesus. I don't need to get married. Come now, Lord. I don't need to see my kids grow up. Some generation needs to take their young children through the final crisis. It might as well be mine. What are we waiting for? I just want to look at a few things as we wrap this up, as we look at where we are in the scope of Earth's history. With respect to the second coming, Daniel 2 shows that a stone strikes the image and God sets up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. That's the second coming. But here's some things that need to take place before Jesus comes back. If you look at this table on the screen, you'll notice that these are the four major prophetic chapters of Daniel. You may not be able to read all of that, but I'll just explain it to you this way. Daniel 2 shows the kingdoms of this world, starting with Babylon, and it goes all the way to the end of the world with the second coming. Daniel 7 again starts with Babylon. It takes you through the kingdoms of this world, all the way to the beginning of the judgment, which begins in 1844. Daniel 8 takes you through the kingdoms of this earth, all the way to the end of the world, but it's the cleansing of the sanctuary, which is also 1844. And then the prophecy of Daniel 11 takes you through the kingdoms of this earth, through the kings of the north and the kings of the south, all the way to the end of the world when Michael stands up and probation closes. So here's the amazing thing. When you look at the big picture of Daniel, and you'll get this if you study through the book that I've written, but this is just giving you the overview of what you're looking at. Daniel tells you from these four major prophetic visions that the most significant period of Earth's history is from 1844 to the second coming. Daniel 7 and 8 take you to 1844. Daniel 2 and Daniel 11, 12 take you to the close of probation and second coming into the world. So between 1844 to the second coming is what we call the hour of God's judgment. That's the hour that we are living in now. And what's interesting is Daniel 2 shows us that Jesus is coming again. Daniel 7 shows us that in order for Jesus to come back, there must be a judgment in heaven first. Daniel 8 shows us that in order for the judgment in heaven to finish, the sanctuary in heaven must be cleansed. Daniel 11 shows us that when the sanctuary in heaven is cleansed, Michael stands up, probation closes, and Jesus comes back. That's how the four visions line up. Jesus is coming again, but there has to be a judgment first. And the judgment won't finish until the sanctuary cleanses. And when the sanctuary is cleansed, Michael stands up, probation closes, and Jesus comes back. That's the big picture of Daniel. But 1844 to the second coming, that period of time, that's the time that we are living in right now. That's the hour of God's judgment, is the most significant period of Earth's history. And it's amazing to me how many of us as Seventh-day Adventists have lost sight of that eternal reality that we are living in the most important era of the history of the world. We get to be alive in the most important era. I mean, Daniel would have done anything to be alive in our day. Abraham would have done anything to be alive in our day. Moses and Elijah and the apostles. And we are the ones that God has chosen because God sees something in us that He says, I can take you, whatever your character issues may be, and I can transform you into the likeness of Jesus so that you can be my representative during the hour of God's judgment before I come back. That's God's plan for us.